Happy Friday, football fans. Tyler Terrence along with my main man, Devin Kerr. Thank you so much for tuning in again, as this is the second ever episode of the SCCL show, as we are getting closer and closer to our first matchup. We'll preview that first matchup in this episode. Seattle and Olympia is going to be our first one. But Devin Kerr, looking forward to the weekend, and we got a lot of exciting things on tap, and we actually have some new news for you as far as content is concerned, as we now are going to have the audio rip from this show and going to be available on podcast. Right now it's available on Spotify and Anchor, so whether you're grocery shopping, working out on the treadmill, or maybe just taking the dogs for a walk like Devin Kerr, I know he likes to listen to his podcast, you now have that option. Mr. Kerr, how are you, my friend?
How vain does that sound that I walk and listen to our own podcast?
Not our podcast.
No, the good news is a podcast. Yeah,
go.
They brought us back another week.
For now.
Honored to be back with you, and it really is. It's astounding to think that it's right there, right? The tournament is right there, and how much fun now. You know, the initial show was great. We got to cover kind of a little bit of everyone. We dabble, but now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. Now we really get right into these games, and first up, Seattle Sounders Olympia. And we'll take a look at the two teams, just overall give you an idea of exactly who they are. Seattle fans, I'm sure, want to know who Olympia are and vice versa. Take a look at the Sounders and Olympia from Honduras. Of course, Olympia have actually won the first ever edition of Scotiabank Concacaf League back in 2017. 31-time national champions, as well as 3-time Honduran Cup. For the Seattle Sounders, not nearly as illustrious of a history, as long as a history, but if you look at their numbers and what they've been able to do since their first season about 10, 11 years ago, they're certainly right on pace to be what Olympia is at this point in time, maybe 100 years down the line. But you and I won't be around, but that's okay. Speak for yourself. Life and longevity run deep in my veins. But, we obviously see the founded 2007 Seattle Sounders, obviously part of a USL franchise before that, and they were great then too. So, to continue on. But this is a team, if you take a look at squads coming out of the MLS, that's royalty right now, right? I mean, they've done it all.
At this point, it has to be.
3 out of the last 4 finals. They've won 2. That's not bad. Oh, by the way, you go back to the early part of the decade, 3 Open Cups back to back to back. A lot of the personnel have started to move on, but the message stays the same, right? Let's win, and let's win it in emphatic fashion. They're coming off an MLS Cup champion, so here we go.
Well, these two teams are not unfamiliar with each other. They have met before, and that's what Garth Lagerwey was talking about down in Mexico City in the draw about a month ago, and we'll take a look at what that matchup just sort of unfolded. And two teams that are obviously very good and very talented. Again, they've been around the block, especially Olympia. I mean, you got to look at this Seattle Sounders team that has a lot of the same familiar names on this roster. Stefan Fry, Christian Roldan, Jordan Morris. You got to look at the late Ziggy Schmidt, and of course Brian Schmetzer, who is now the head coach of the Seattle Sounders. This is back in 2015-16. It would eventually be the Sounders taking control of this group. They would split the series over the course of this 2-game series in the tournament back when it was group stages. But really, as you can see, it's actually Albert Lee scoring the goal for Olympia. Of course, is with Houston Dynamo last in Major League Soccer. It looked like a very physical match, Devin, when you and I went back to go look at it. What are you expecting just from a very generic standpoint between these two sides?
Well, for Seattle Sounders, first and foremost, you have to take a look at, what are they going to be able to do going forward, coming off of the conversation we had last show. And if you're just joining us, didn't be able to catch it, that's okay. You can jump on the social media platforms, CONCACAF, they have it all. How's Seattle going to reload? How are they going to now step in a little bit? We know what Will Bruin's capable of. They get Brad Smith back. Harry Ships in the mix. Kim Keehee, that future is still uncertain. So a team that has a boatload of experience, but again, they're going to need some reinforcements. And Olympia, you and I were talking about this off air, not the greatest start to the league. They're only 2 games in, the 1-1, and you kind of had a little joke about, maybe they needed to back off the cards a little bit, the emotion. Yeah. But they were severely lacking emotion in their CONCACAF League games coming down the stretch, and they just couldn't get it done. So there's a lot to play for Olympia, but they really need to reorganize themselves because they've definitely been wishy-washy.
Well, this Olympia side, their last appearance in Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League was 2018, actually against New York Red Bulls. It finished 3-1, and for this Olympia group, they've done really well in CONCACAF tournaments before. Overall, they're 18-9-15 in CONCACAF Champions League since the installment of the modern format. As you can see, this Olympia group, very passionate, very talented, stingy on the defensive end. Ever Alvarado is one of those X factors that we're going to continuously keep an eye on. Meanwhile, for the Seattle Sounders, their last appearance was 2018 as well. They ran into a bit of a buzzsaw in the second round. They took on Santa Tecla in the first. That's when Jordan Morris actually tore his ACL. They lost the first leg, ended up winning the second leg against Santa Tecla. Here are some highlights from their MLS Cup winning season, as they were able to take down Toronto FC in the third part of that trilogy. Raul Rui Diaz, who's been the leading goal scorer and the talisman for Seattle, absolutely magnificent. And they were knocked out of the 2018 Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League by Chivas, who would go on to win it in 2018. And again, whenever you see these MLS sides match up with Mexicans later on in the tournament, that's when your mouth starts to water. Those are the really, really juicy fixtures. And Devin, going to ask you this question. I know that there's a lot of things for Olympia that we need to sift through, especially from a tactical, emotional, and just from a downright clearance standpoint. We'll get to that a little bit later on, and we'll show you exactly what we're talking about. At a base level, what excites you about this matchup?
I think first and foremost, the first leg and the stadium moving a little bit. Okay, now let's go to the National Stadium. They have a lot of experience there, Olympia, so that's not a cause for concern. Capacity, you're going to pump a couple extra thousand into it, that's fine. The fact that Seattle Sounders are going to have to go on the road and challenge them, that's what excites me, because it's the question marks for both teams. Okay, can you bring enough emotion? Can you reset your roster a little bit? Obviously, Olympia's got a head start. They're 2 games into their season. They're going to be a bit further down the road. But you got to go on the road if you're Brian Schmetzer and the boys. Garth Lagerwey, you got to go on the road, and you got to get it done and set a precedent, and then come back and kind of go, okay, do we need to regroup? Are we where we want to be? I mean, for me, that's what it is, right out of the gate. For you?
And the biggest thing for me, I think, is that when you look at these Central American teams, when they're taking on MLS teams, it's like when MLS teams take on Mexican teams. It's their Super Bowl. This is their opportunity to play in front of a packed CenturyLink Stadium and take on one of the better teams within the continent. So for me, it's about being able to refocus and not even refocus, but just focus and establish some sort of rhythm in your first real competitive match of the calendar year and trying to go into a tough place to play. Because if you remember in that 2018 tie between Olympia and Red Bulls really had to work for it in the second leg. It took a Sean Davis deflected goal in the second leg at Red Bull Arena. They drew the first leg. So these Central American teams, they love going up against MLS sides, and they view it as a really good opportunity to showcase themselves.
Funny how in the showcasing side of things, when they're trying to continue to promote their own talent, that was an interesting comment. I understand it's coming out of Saprissa, but another one of our teams that's in the tournament, and they said to us, they were spiteful about it. They talked about how we want our talent to be seen. We don't want to be looked down upon. They feel like maybe they are slighted a little bit when it comes to MLS teams, and that they look down and say, okay, we're not on par with them, almost as if the teams from Mexico looking down on MLS squads, MLS doing the same thing to the Central American teams. So it's kind of like, okay, not only do we want to beat them, but we want to promote our players so that, again, direct quote from Saprissa, we're not trying to sell them across the border or to go to the MLS. We want them going over to Europe. Yeah. So again, it's that added fuel to the fire, and it just makes for really nice matchups.
It's always territorial battles when it comes to Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League. Devin mentioned it before. There truly is no place like home. Let's see what that's going to mean for Olympia, as they're going to have to change venues. We'll dive deeper into that and what the 6-hour drive is going to mean for the fans. Don't go anywhere. welcome back to the Concacaf studios, and we are going to take a deeper look into the Seattle and Olympia matchup. And as Devin mentioned before the break, there's a little bit of a venue change for this Olympia group. And Devin, I know nobody likes to be displaced from their homes. I had a leak in my apartment a few months ago that was a bit traumatizing. I had to be placed in a hotel. They paid for it, of course, but I know that you're having renovations soon. Nobody likes to be displaced from home. It's a very stressful time for these Olympia fans and for Olympia. Devin, I'm going to pose this question to you. You played at a very high level. Having to play in this big of a tournament, 6 hours away from where you normally play, what sort of impact is this going to have on Pedro Trollio's side?
For any other squad, I would be heavily concerned. The reason I'm not is two. Number one, they're familiar with the venue. They've played games there on a regular basis. It's the Honduran national team's home venue, so they're all going to have familiarity within that. Also, the passion within this country for the game itself. Any time that someone else from another country starts to step in, club or domestic, domestic or national,
we see them rally around.
It rallies around it. It does not matter what the colors are at that point in time. And yes, you're going to have the locals that are going to stay with their team, but this is an event. It's not a Friday night thing where you're going out to a boxing match. It doesn't matter what day of the week, what time things are going on, they are going to rally around this squad. And especially when they find out a team like the Seattle Sounders with all their pedigree are coming in, they are going to give them everything possible. 37,000 plus screaming fans.
Well, Devin mentioned the pedigree of the Seattle Sounders team and their Major League Soccer Cup winning season in 2019, despite a rather unimpressive regular season. I don't think many people had them pegged. I think LAFC was by far the favorite in the Western Conference, and that posed the question for Devin and I and producer Roberto Fernandez: what have past MLS Cup winners look like faring in Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League in the following season? And here's a look at the past MLS Cup winners in the modern format with this knockout round starting in the round of 16. Now, there's a modern format that goes back to 2008, but as far as this new format in the calendar year, this is the most apples-to-apples way we can compare it. Of course, Toronto FC, they went in 2017. They get all the way to the finals, and they were a Michael Bradley skied penalty away from potentially winning it for the first time for Major League Soccer. Atlanta United, bit different situation because you have Miguel Almiron leaving, going over to Newcastle United. Frank de Boer steps in after Tata Martino takes a new job with the Mexican national team. So it was a little bit of a different look. Toronto FC had all their guns loaded and they were ready to go. That was their team that won with a few extra pieces, and that's how close they got. And, of course, Seattle Sounders, we're going to see how they fare. And with all of that said, when we go back to the formats, I want to ask you this question. We had an original format where we had group stages, and then the quarters, semis, and finals were actually played in the following calendar year. You didn't have your first group stage game of Champions League in the old format until around August. Now we start in February. For Major League Soccer teams, which format benefits them the most?
It's a good question, but I'm actually going to let a friend of ours step in first. Someone that we had the opportunity to pick his brain a little bit because he's talking about pedigree. He's got a little bit more underneath the belt. DeMarcus Beasley was kind enough to grace his presence at the draw down in Mexico City, and he kind of gave us an idea of where he was going to go with this question. So let's start with that, and then we can double back around. Let's start with DeMarcus Beasley and how he feels about the question.
It's difficult, especially coming off a preseason where, these games are basically your first game, your real game. You haven't really got a test of, real competition. You're coming off, especially speaking from experience, 3 months out of MLS not playing, and then going and playing a high-level game in this competition is difficult, So, and now what I think is different from the past is that MLS is bringing young, players, not just the old guard, 29, 30, 32. They're bringing in 20, 21, 22-year-old players that are worth $6, $7, $8 million, and then maybe sell them, years to come. But they're bringing in those type of players so they can compete. You have to do that. You have to those types of clubs are going that direction. I think to be able to compete in this competition now, you have to do that.
Great stuff from DeMarcus Beasley, of course, who needs no introduction. I mean, over 100 caps of the U.S. men's national team, outstanding pedigree in Major League Soccer. Who can forget his game-winning goal in the 84th minute against Guastatoya in last year's Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League? Such a great guy to get some insight as to why MLS teams historically in the modern format have struggled. Anything you want to piggyback off of with DeMarcus or maybe disagree with?
It's hard to disagree with him, right? with a guy that has been at it firsthand and ground level, however you want to call it. But I agree with most of what he said. Obviously, the big key factor here is going to be money and pumping it into the rosters and giving these teams the ability, to dive deeper into these tournaments. But for me, it's the old format. It's the old format because if you take a look at results now, Tyler said to you, we need to keep apples to apples. So it's basically the past 3 years, and this is the third year, so it's only 2 years. We've seen, teams make a run to the final. Obviously, that was Toronto. They lost to Chivas. And we get Atlanta United that loses in the quarterfinals. But if you go back every single other year, they haven't just been competitive, MLS teams. They're making strides. You have to go back to before the rebrand. You go back to 1998. DC United took the tournament down. It was called something different then, of course, and you had LA Galaxy. 2000. 2 in the span of 3 years were able to take this tournament down. Before the restructure, before the way they did the formatting, the worst year was actually back in 2009, 2010. Only one team made it out of the group play. It was Columbus Crew. That was astonishing to me. Number one, that it was the Crew that got out. But you take a look, shot across the bow, but you take a look at the team and all the teams that have come in, all the other years, you've got at least 2-3 teams making it to the quarters and making it to the semifinals. That's easier this year because you get a bypass to the round of 16 immediately. So you've got a 50-50 chance. It's easy to look at the numbers and go, okay, well, we had a finalist in 2017 in Toronto. We've had 3 semifinalists and 7 quarterfinalists altogether. Yeah, but you basically get 4 teams into the quarter or the round of 16 anyway. So your odds are going to increase. So I still think the old format reaches them better because you're hitting full strides. Your team is playing much better. I don't mind the fact that then it was middle to end of the year. Yes, you could argue that guys are tired. I don't care. I would rather have a team that was ready to play and knew they were seasoned, they had experienced things, than a team that was coming into the beginning of the year, shot in the dark. It's a wink and a prayer from distance.
My biggest thing with your argument there and that the old format, for me, it's the new format, and just for the simple reason, the roster looks so much different from when you might have won that MLS Cup to then when you're competing in the most competitive games within Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League, because it's not until the following calendar year that you're starting to do that around March. And also, having to balance MLS playoffs right around the corner, potentially you're at the end of the U.S. Open Cup if you're lucky enough to be there, and then Champions League as well. I think the workload is incredible. And, we talked to Garth Lagerwey, and we heard his bits last week in terms of how difficult it is to balance it. For me, having all of that in the same stretch of the calendar year is really, really difficult, but only time will tell.
Just realize one quick follow-up on that. Don't disagree. Okay. However, you could make the same argument for Liga MX teams where the Aperture Clausura, because you win this spring, come back now.
They get to spend as much money as they want. They don't have a salary cap, so they can just buy players that can deal with it.
God, they're so smart. They get it.
So
they get
simple.
It. They get it.
It's so simple. All right, folks, when we come back, we'll take a look at the bracket, specifically Seattle Sounders and Olympian. What lies ahead for them potentially if they are to progress? Stay with us. continue to dig through this Seattle and Olympia matchup, which is inching closer and closer. Still a little bit of a ways off. We still need to get into the month of February, but my fingers are starting to tingle. Do you got it on there?
Carry the one. That's like 2 days away.
Is it 2 days? Well, until we get to February. Yeah,
he's
never been good with math. He didn't pass. That's why he's here in the studio talking about football with you all. But let's talk for a second about this bracket and for Seattle and Olympia. And when you look at the right side of the bracket compared to the left side of the bracket, we'll zoom in on Seattle and Olympia and sort of what that little grouping looks like there with Montreal and Saprissa. If I'm Brian Schmetzer in Seattle, I'm licking my chops at this side. I mean, I don't want to say it's a cakewalk into the semifinal, but what's just short of a cakewalk? Is it like a pastry walk, something along those lines?
Hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah, Danish walk, yeah, something, yeah. But listen, Montreal, Saprissa, I mean, these are all teams that Seattle, just having won an MLS Cup, they feel like they should be able to beat them. But again, you can't overlook a team like Olympia because they will bury you.
The right side of the bracket is just loaded with teams that can kind of do whatever they want, right? It's not a disrespectful comment to that side. It's just everybody's on the left. And it's kind of funny how it flip-flopped, how you had Leon in pot 2. They end up on the left-hand side, and they're stacked.
Yeah.
And Tigres team, I said they're my favorites in the dark horse. They're in the last 4 finals. Oh, here you go. Let's throw you in the top right and just have a little day with it. So it's going to be a fun one. But again, to your point, they have a lot of work to do, but I feel like it's a lot less than what's going on the other side of the bracket.
Well, for this Olympia group, I mean, they had one of the most epic collapses in the history of CONCACAF, and that is not a hyperbole, that is just a fact. And we have to go back and take a look at it because this was by far one of the best games of Scotiabank Concacaf League of 2019. And this is exactly why we have the new format and why all these teams have to participate, so we can have moments and ties like this. We'll start with the first leg, and this is in Honduras, and it ends up being Jorge Benguche who bags a brace. He gets one in the first half, and he gets one in the second half. The one in the second half was a mighty impressive goal. Saprissa had Olympia had gone down a man, and watch Jorge and Benguche just absolutely go to work on Jalen Haddon. This was part of our top 5 goals of Scotiabank Concacaf League, and at this point in time, if you're Olympia, having the 2-0 lead heading back to Costa Rica, you have to feel mighty good about yourself.
Amazing, and I remember talking about it after this game was over, and you and I were kind of like, okay, well, they have a lot of work to do, but it's game, set, match, right? You walk into this stadium, okay, yeah, it's going to be a hostile environment, but it was only half full. Literally, there's only about 12,000 fans in the stadium, so now you're walking in going, wow, we don't have our hands full. We got this thing in the bag, but that's not how it worked out. Saprissa got out early. They got things going. They think, okay, maybe we've got a chance. But Olympia came right back. They got out in front 3-1, and now I'm thinking, okay, this is over.
And this is second half. Jorge Alvarez, the Honduran Youth International, great goal. Look at the celebration from Olympia. They think they have this thing won, and to be fair, in any other tie against any other team, they would. It was 3-1, and at this point, Saprissa needs 3 goals. They need a win on the aggregate because of the away goal. And slowly but surely, look at the ball from Venegas, the finish from Angulo. It's the Marvin Angulo highlight reel. Bends in this free kick. Now, it's time. If you're Olympia, you're still in control here. All you have to do is get out of trouble.
Away goal.
What happens?
Nothing happens. That's the problem. Watch the back line. There's no emotion whatsoever. Nobody takes off after it. Second, third, fourth chances. Watch right now. I'm going to give you 20 yards of space. You do whatever you want. Dissecting ball, nothing happens. Okay, turnover. Let's play out of the back. Let's do it selfishly and give it right back to the squad. And again, nobody steps. This is a point in time when you get into a match, late in cup games, where you have to dig down deep. The soccer smarts and the IQ has to take another step. Worst case scenario, if your body is that tired, now you want to play that ball, but if you're that tired, knock it down the pitch. Honestly, it is that
do
bad.
Anything but that.
It is that bad of a performance at the tail end of the game. Now, mind you, to start this match, the second leg, at no point in time did I actually think Olympia looked good. They got a goal, and that was fine.
Yeah.
And when they got
when
they got out to front in 3-1, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, they should have won, but they didn't look good by any means at all. Now, you talked about Angulo, Barantes in the middle, Randall Leal, Nashville SC. You guys are getting a good one. He's obviously transferred over there. They just looked bad, though. Like, Saprissa picked them apart, and tactically, it was not impressive whatsoever.
And this is, I mean, all the credit in the world is Saprissa, and you're not going to take anything away from what they were able to do.
Of course.
But Olympia falling apart like that, the majority of that is self-inflicted wounds. An Angulo free kick, that was an absolute stunner in the top bins. And then I know that you don't like the clearances and everything that led up to the last goal, but the ball from Zuniga and then the finish from Ramirez, I mean, come on. And that place, even though that place wasn't full, it was absolutely rocking at Estadio Ricardo Saprissa Ima. But any other thoughts on that game? I mean, for me, if you're looking at that Olympia team, I'm such an intangible guy. If they had won that game and gotten to the final and maybe even won CONCACAF League, I feel like they have so much more momentum heading into Champions League. But exiting CONCACAF League in such a woeful, abysmal fashion, it hurts.
And then the start to their season.
It hurts, and then the start to the season.
Well, one of the good things is continue to join us for these shows. Again, Monday, Friday, 5 Eastern Standard Time, Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League show. We're going to recap everything, and we're going to do a lot of tactical breakdowns, one of which for me on these teams would have been Olympia and their inability to respond to Saprissa, where Saprissa would turn their midfield into a diamond shape. You did not have the boys in the middle, Alvarez and Pineda. They weren't shifting. That's communication. That's stuff that when you get into these cup games, you have to communicate appropriately. It doesn't matter how tired you are, how deep this game is going. You have to find ways to get better. So we're going to give you a peek behind the curtain. We're going to do interviews, phone calls in, all that fun stuff. But most importantly, Olympia, Seattle, first one, done. Get excited. Another one's right around the corner.
Anything in particular that Olympia needs to do to ensure success?
Yes. I said it before, it's communication.
That's it?
Yeah, well, emotion was there's a million things that it could be. But what it came down to for me was you saw guys, when they tried to move into the final third, go off on their own. No one was trailing. Okay, well, that's a couple problems there, but it can be a shot from behind. You start from your goalkeeper, you move from your center backs, and you move forward. When you watch them play, they didn't have the worst execution. The problem it was one-offs. It was almost like, okay, especially in the second leg, we're up, we're going to just keep going. We can die this and kill this game out. It's like kids who are 18, 19, 20 years old going into the collegiate game in the United States, running down into the corner. The problem is they were doing 5 minutes into the second leg.
The biggest problem for me was that this is an Olympia group that only gave up 2 goals heading into that semifinal, and then you give up that many. I mean, you shut Saprissa out being down a man.
They also didn't score a lot either.
They didn't score a lot, no. And Ever Alvarado, who's their outside back and sometimes center back, depending on the formation that they were playing, was probably their most dynamic player going forward, besides Jorge Benguche, who's paired up with Jerry Bengtsson, who's made some runs with New England Revolution before. But it was just such a collapse, and it was like a bad car accident. You can't look away, but you can't not watch at the same time. It was bizarre.
If you're laying chase and you're bringing Benguche off in the 65th minute, you have a serious problem. You have a problem.
Take pressure.
They knew it right away, and they could not catch up. And credit to the coach to try and make changes. But when he's coming off, if I'm a player on the field and he's coming off, I'm going, oh, you know what? We are in trouble.
Well, we have a lot going on within Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League, but we always, always, always want to pay respect to everything else going around our beloved region and within the beautiful game on both sides of the ball, men and women's. Of course, CONCACAF Women's Olympic qualifying for Tokyo 2020 is just around the corner. And if you're in the Houston area, do me a favor, head over to Discovery Green Park in the Hall of Femme. It's an interactive women's soccer sort of palooza epicenter. It's so cool. There's so many different things that you can do. There's a bar up top. I know that's getting Devin's attention, but there's a lot of different things that you can do here. It's great. The 3 different locations, BBVA, HEB Park, and Dignity Health. Obviously, the first 2 in Texas, and then the final one in California, all ahead of Tokyo 2020 CONCACAF Women's Olympic qualifying. But folks, we hope you have the best of best weekends. We will be back here on Monday, 5 o'clock Eastern Time, same exact time. A week from today, 5 o'clock Eastern Time on Friday. But until then, we bid you adieu, and we're going to let you soak in the first leg of Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League from last year's final between Tigres and Monterrey one more time in our 90 in 60. Have a great weekend, folks.
Football. We could say that for us,
Pour nous, para uns, para nosotros,
on this side of the world, football is our life, the game of our lives. Football always comes first. We all come from different cultures, but football unites us.
sin pillar su saben, nos une.
One region, one voice.
Una voz, one voice, une voix.
If we listen closely, we are born ready to shout. And from there, We start to play with intensity until the last minute. Faced with obstacles, we work through them. We will improve day by day, always forward, making football better everywhere, every match. Our passion is so strong that it breaks down borders, even those that are hard to knock down, for all of us to reach our dreams. We are the region where the game comes first, bringing the game closer to our fans, and decisions are always made for the good of the sport. We raise our level every day, making football better everywhere, every match. We will put all our teams in position to win in our region.
Nuestra región.
Notre région. Nuestra región.
Everyone gets to play, connected and respected. One region.
Una región.
Une région. Una région.
Together, we are the collective best of our individual cultures. We are millions of souls. We are together for the love of our game. United for football. 41 countries for one love. CONCACAF. Love for our game.
At the start of the 2019 Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League, we had 16 teams hailing all across North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And wouldn't you know it, when we're down to 2 teams, it is the 2 sides who are just about 25 minutes apart from each other in Monterrey, Mexico, as it is Tigres playing host to Rayados in the first leg of the 2019 Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League final. Tyler Terrence along with Juan Arango, thank you so much for joining us and for tuning in what should be a historic match and a Clásico Regio with an electric atmosphere. Pitch conditions for tonight, a slight chance of rain, 76 degrees, but nothing that should prohibit us from getting these 90 minutes in ahead. Juan, it cannot be understated enough. This is going to be an absolute bloodbath in terms of the pride, the passion, and just the downright plain fact that these 2 teams don't like each other. How much does it mean, not only to the players, but to the fans?
And it's not just the passion and the blood and the guts and the tears and everything else. It's saying we're number one, we're the best, we have the history, we've beaten you before, we want to beat you again. And you see that because Diego Alonso said it yesterday during the press conference. This is going to be tight. It's going to come down to little things as far as the differences between one team and the next.
And while we gave you a brief glimpse of the trophy, why not take a look at the road to the trophy? And for both of these sides, it has not been an easy road. Both teams having to go through not only Major League Soccer sides, but Liga MX sides as well. I mean, you look at Tigres and their road, they were able to take care of business in the first leg against Santos Monterrey with a 10-2 aggregate win over the last standing Major League Soccer team in Sporting Kansas City. And when we looked at these 2 teams heading into this tournament, it was always going to be Clásico Regio. Only chance it's going to happen is in the final. That's what everybody was sort of hoping for, and especially Tuca Ferretti, a team in Tigres that has gotten to this final before, have never been able to get across the finish line and hoist that ever-elusive International Cup. And meanwhile, on the other side for Monterrey, they've been here and they've done that. And like you said, Juan, it's a matter of being number one, being the best, not only within your country, but within about a 25-minute radius as well.
And remember that these 2 teams just faced off a little over a year ago in the Liga MX final. Tigres winning at Monterrey to be able to crown themselves champions yet again, but also that little spot, well, right now it's about a thorn, about 1.5 inches thick as far as Tigres is concerned. This is their 4th final coming in. They've already been to previous finals in CONCACAF Champions League. Also, back in 2015 in Copa Libertadores, they were not able to win any of those finals. This one is going to sting if they don't come through.
Well, these 2 sides have seen each other this year. Back on March 9th, it was a 1-1 draw. Funes Mori had that incredible back heel to get things started. in the 34th minute. And then Luis Quinones on what really we can only call was just a disastrous mistake by the Monterrey backline. It would finish 1-1. There's not a lot to separate these two sides, whether it be this year in 2019 and their form in the Liga MX table, both currently sitting in second and third respectively between Tigres and Monterrey. Monterrey a bit further back of Club Leon, who have been absolute world beaters during this Liga MX Clausura stage of 2019. But really, when you take a look at these two sides, they have great strikers. The middle of the field is really, really good just in terms of moving the ball, and they're tough to break down. Tigres has actually only surrendered one goal at home throughout this entire competition, and that was against the Saprissa side when the game was really already in hand at that point. Meanwhile, on the other side for Monterrey, they put 10 past the Sporting Kansas City side, who was the last great hope for Major League Soccer until they weren't.
Yeah, that hope lasted very little in that first leg especially. But not only that, it's the fact that we've seen this Monterrey side come back. They had a bit of a stretch in Liga MX play where they were struggling, came back big against Santos Laguna. Look at that right now.
Players coming out onto the pitch here at Estadio Universitario. Clásico Regio for Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League final. It's Tigres and Monterrey. Monterrey moving down the receiving line. Darla Pavon having a little bit of fun with Tigres coming down that handshake line as the crowd is ready to go here at Estadio Universitario. As you get a look down the Monterrey bench, we'll get to starting 11s in just a few moments. Again, I'm Tyler Terrence. Sitting right next to me is Juan Arango. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Tuesday night to enjoy what should be an absolutely emphatic 90 minutes. And here's a look at the Tigres starting 11. There's a little bit of a change here due to a yellow card caution suspension for Chaka Rodriguez. And as far as the back line's concerned, we're probably not going to know until this game starts to unfold what Tuca Ferretti wants to do.
It could be a back line of 4, it could be a back line of 3, it could be a back line of 5. But one thing's for sure, no Andre Pierre Gignac up front. It will be Ener Valencia. Carlos Salcedo getting the start for Ricardo Tuca Ferretti. And it'll be important to see how they come out of the gate. Maybe a foreshadowing of things that come that little slide by Dorlan Pavon. At least if you're a Tigres fan, they hope that's not the case. John Pitti, the referee. Honduran assistants, Cristian Ramirez, Alejandro Camarena, and Said Martinez, Hector Said Martinez of Honduras as well. The refereeing crew looking to impart justice here, Tyler.
John Pitti has actually had his fair share of experience within the World Cup, particularly in Russia in the summer of 2018 as a fourth official for a number of large matches that took place in Russia a little over a year ago now, as John Pitti and our refereeing crew look about set to go. And we'll get a look at the starting 11 for Monterrey in just a few moments, who have been in terrific form, specifically within this tournament. 10-2 win over Sporting Kansas City in the semifinals, as we'll take a look at what Monterrey is going to bring to the table. And much like Tigres, in terms of their back line, the formation is going to be what we've seen throughout this entire tournament, 4-2-3-1. But again, the center back pairing is a different one than we're used to, with Stefan Medina, the Colombian, stepping in.
Stefan Medina stepping in, and of course, no Basanta, as he's going to be out for an extended period of time. No Cesar Montes after breaking his nose this past weekend against Veracruz. So Stefan Medina, Nico Sanchez, pretty much the lineup we've seen for quite a while for Diego Alonso.
Monterrey, 3-time Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League champions from 2010 to 2013, beating Santos twice and actually Real Salt Lake of Major League Soccer once, as Nahuel Guzman getting the troops fired up in the Tigres huddle. Meanwhile, on the other side for Tigres, they've been to finals before. They have never been able to take that step. But Tuca Ferretti looking to change all that, and it starts with 90 minutes here tonight at home in front of a raucous crowd. And there's a look at the substitutes available. Andre Pierre-Gignac is the name that jumps off the page. He has bags and bags of goals at his disposal, but he's had some lower body discomfort as of late. He's been playing in Liga MX games. He has not seen a single minute of action in Champions League play.
He has not, but you know what? With a player like that, you don't need to see a lot of action. He is Mr. Big Game.
He is the action.
He is the action. He is the straw that stirs the drink. He is the man that makes it happen. Regardless of how many minutes he plays, he will always show up for you in big games.
Nahuel Guzman in between the sticks for Tigres. Meanwhile, it's Marcelo Barovero, who Andre Pierre-Gignac has actually never scored against in 7 appearances against the 35-year-old from Argentina, as John Pitti gets us underway from Estadio Universitario in Monterrey.
Tease us there for a
little
second.
Premature. And Valencia wants a little bit of help from his Chilean teammate Eduardo Vargas. Now we're officially underway. 180 minutes ahead, 90 minutes here at Estadio Universitario. We'll go 25 minutes down the road next week for the second leg of this final. Again, Tyler Terrans alongside Juan Arango. Thank you so much for joining us. 90 minutes ahead of what should just be downright incredible football.
Immediately you start to see some of the defensive structures as far as what Tuca Ferretti wants to establish, a backline of 3 beginning to become quite apparent with Salcedo over on the left. Then you start to look at Mesa and Ayala over on the other side. Pretty much that triumvirate in the middle is already a man down. Tendency of things to come is Aviles Hurtado, player that's been nicked up throughout this tournament, is already on the ground, and we'll see how he's able to function throughout this entire match.
Hurtado, one of the more dangerous players for Monterrey moving forward. 31-year-old from Colombia in his 2nd season with Rayados. 4 goals and 5 assists this season. He had that incredible bicycle kick in Liga MX play a few weeks ago that was truly spectacular. And for Diego Alonso, well, he's been there and done that. Not exactly with Monterrey, but with Pachuca back in the 2016-17 season. Comes in the near side for Salcedo, who's been playing in the center back role, but enjoying his time at the outside back position in the opening 90 seconds or so. Here's Aquino. Loves to run at defenders 1v1. Tigres showing teeth in the opening moments. Dueña's shot blocked in front. And Quinones will just see it out of play.
One of the keys in the match is to look at how the players in the middle of the pitch start to recycle one another, how the movement ends up really creating space or ends up creating associations. That's what these 2 teams have been able to thrive upon. How these 2 teams are able to connect amongst each other in the middle of the pitch, create and establish those types of connections, and make themselves get a plethora of opportunities throughout this entire match. Now, if you're able to neutralize, that's going to be another story.
Awkward play here, and that's going to be a foul. We'll worry if we've seen something relatively similar to that in a Champions League final before. More of the European variety, but Ender Valencia is being told by John Pitti he doesn't want to see any more of that. Valencia is trying to make his case, but he knew exactly what he did.
Very similar to what Ronaldinho tried to do a few years ago with Querétaro. Of course, that looked a little bit more stylish than this one, but still Valencia, he's got to find his way as the former Everton man.
And it should be really interesting to see how it's going to unfold as Pizarro getting stuck in there, but last touch coming off of Tigres. This physical play, I think the grace period is going to be a bit longer than most other finals. As Monterrey trying to find an opening here. Hurtado thought he had an opening. Quickly closed down. Here's Pabon. He's going to whip one in, but easy enough to handle for Nahuel Guzman. And he wants to go quickly on the other end. Quinones pushes it out wide. Now it's the Chilean Eduardo Vargas. Dangerous challenge from Hugo Ayala, and it's a late whistle from John Pitti. But a whistle nonetheless, and a free kick coming from Monterrey.
As you mentioned in the beginning, Tyler, it's going to be physical, pure, unadulterated physicality. That's what it is right now. Funes Mori, as I mentioned, a good week not just for him, but for his twin brother as well. Rogelio, part of the ideal 11 as far as Liga MX is concerned after his hat-trick against Santos Laguna. But also, even more interesting, just the other week, his brother ends up being on the ideal 11 as far as La Liga is concerned after Villarreal were able to get out of the relegation zone. So it's been a good past couple of days for the Funes Mori household.
Funes Mori, who hasn't been scoring as often in this tournament, but has been a playmaker nonetheless. Pabon, as well as Hurtado, have been getting in on the scoring act for Monterrey in the past couple of rounds. Nahuel Guzman having to do some organizing at the back for Tigres.
Watch out with the opportunity here. It's still within Layun's range.
Well, now the whole Tigres line is going to move up. Nico Sanchez wants it. It's not a bad ball, and it gets all the way through, but just out of the reach of Hurtado. And you can see the sense of urgency from Tigres. Even when that ball goes out of play, Nahuel Guzman wants to go as quickly as possible. I mentioned Diego Alonso and his successes in this tournament, winning it with Pachuca back in 2016-17, getting that automatic bid into the FIFA Club World Cup. And was an outstanding player in his own right. We're looking to take yet another club in Liga MX to the club promised land. As Carioca bends one in, Valencia, and that is another really physical challenge from Sanchez, and he's going to be shown mustard here in the 14th minute. And that's not exactly what you wanted if you're Diego Alonso, as your main center back being shown a card in the opening 14 minutes or so.
14 minutes, first yellow card of the match. Nico Sanchez immediately coming in, but you knew that this was within the realm of possibilities, not just because of how this match has developed, but how things have developed in previous encounters between these two teams, that is a major factor. We'll see how that conditions Sanchez.
As we have heard that Montes is probable for the second leg of the final after breaking his nose, as that challenge is a late one, and now a yellow card and some verbal dispute afterwards, more so on the sides of Ayala, but he's going to get a yellow card. So now both center backs,
both number fours
have seen yellow cards.
Just chop the big tree down.
It's late from behind. You give Giampitti no choice.
But regardless, you still gotta make your case. You still gotta lobby. Maybe you end up getting away with it, but maybe you don't. And this is going to be very interesting as far as how the central defenders get conditioned as the match progresses. Do you think twice? Do you start looking at things a little bit differently? Do you commit in a different way? Or is the referee going to give you a new lease on life every time you commit a challenge? That's a big question mark as far as
how would you play it?
It's very difficult, because if you're not familiar with the referee, then you have to be wary of what happens.
Loose ball in the box. Hurtado couldn't quite get a touch to it, and Guzman takes a deep sigh of relief, as does the entire crowd here at Estadio Universitario.
So far, Monterrey at least getting near the goal that's being defended by Paton Guzman. As far as it's been, Monterrey have been able to get there. Now, that final touch is a completely different story. But still, they've been able to threaten consistently compared to Tigres, who has pretty much had Marcelo Barovero. Right now, he could be selling beer for all we're concerned, because he hasn't been involved whatsoever.
Pass cut out at the back. It's Aquino. Poor mistake for Monterrey. Giving it away in their own defensive third, and now Tigres will set up shop. Salcedo. And that's a rare mistake from Dueñas, who's usually as sure as you can ask for on the ball.
They tried playing it, forcing it a bit too much. Didn't have the angle to try and make that pass. The intent was to find Edu Vargas, but he was not really with the best angle to put it. Not even the best angle. He didn't have enough on it to really be able to create any pace to begin with. You start seeing those unforced errors beginning to creep their heads.
Now you're starting to see a much heavier press from Tigres as well, and it's a heavy challenge from Ener Valencia, and that'll force another whistle out of Giampitti. And he might need a new one with how much action it's got in the first half hour or so. Aquino. Able to turn the corner. It looked like that ball traveled out of play, and it did. Great job from our camera crew.
The key so far for Tigres is to find Rafael Carioca. He's been the one that at least somewhat finds a little bit more vision, or at least more continuity. When he does not, or anyone in the middle for that matter, gets the ball, you see just pretty much balls being sent to Valencia and him having to win 50-50 balls against one or two defenders. Now, when Carioca is able to get the ball, you see a bit more maneuverability as far as they're concerned.
Funes Mori creating a little bit of a mistake. Funes Mori saved from Guzman. Now it's Pavon and it's offside.
It's going to start all over again. It's the offside being called. But Funes Mori, with a plethora of opportunities there, decides to go with the shot. You see right there, top of your screen, he could have gone out wide, but you hear right there the rebound. Aviles Hurtado was already in an offside position.
So Funes Mori showing you a brief glimpse of what he's capable of in the final third.
That's what's made Monterrey so dangerous. Not just saying, okay, Funes Mori will take the shot, but it's Funes Mori taking the shot, but also knowing that he has other options to go to just in case.
And Valencia just kicking it into space, hoping that he'll be able to run onto it. He is bodied off the ball by Stefan Medina. Pizarro. Good ball onside. Darlan Pavon. Hurtado at the back post. Pavon stands one up. Hurtado! And it's just wide. Brilliant hold-up play from Darlan Pavon, but Hurtado couldn't quite corral it. And another goal kick for Nahuel Guzman, but Monterrey look like they're going to be the first ones to get the breakthrough.
Somebody that hasn't been able to corral Darlan Pavon has been none other than Francisco Mesa, who has that matchup, that really unenviable task of trying to neutralize a player that has that much speed. Evolve as far as Tigres offense is concerned. Monterrey, when they've had it, they've been able to do it, but again, they haven't been able to find the goal that's clearly either.
Here's Pavon. Early ball. Guzman sharp to it. Well, as Juan mentioned at the top of the broadcast, last time that these two teams met outside of the March 9th meeting, which finished in a 1-1 draw.
Big mistake here.
It is a mistake, and it's Hurtado trying to capitalize on it. Hurtado, Pavon. Darlan Pavon, Guzman with a terrific save. And Tigres able to get rid of it, but Nahuel Guzman called into action and answers the call emphatically.
It's not just a mistake, it's the static reaction with which Tigres was able to respond to this mistake that ends up creating the opportunity. All defenders stood there while Darlan Pavon had the ball. Fortunately for them, really no one else tried to open themselves up, run to goal, or try and make an opportunity out of nothing as far as Monterrey were concerned. That's what bails Tigres out in that particular opportunity.
Eduardo Vargas in a heated conversation with John Pitti, and John Pitti doesn't want to hear any more of it. And Hurtado is being told by Pitti, use your head because you just got a yellow. You'll see your second if I see anything like that again.
Right there again, fairly called.
Ball's already gone.
But on Tigres' side, this match is starting to ripen up a little bit more and find a place in the world, or find a place on this pitch, I should say, for Andre Gignac, because now you start to see Edu Vargas losing his head a little bit, losing his focus at times, getting too involved with more yammering and trying to talk a bit more than to focus on his actual game. So do not be surprised if Andre Gignac comes through offside.
Pavon, good ball forward. Onside, here's Sanchez, it's off the post!
I want to see that again. I thought Nico Sanchez was offside.
It was an intriguing ball from Pavon nonetheless. And Sanchez might have curtailed his run. That's a late challenge. It's coming courtesy of Enter Valencia on Celso Ortiz, who's taken a number of knocks in the opening 39 minutes. But our first true chance of the game and our first Woodwork sighting.
He's on. Yeah, just on.
He's just on.
right there. But then again, that shows you how quick we've been talking about how Tigres has been the team that dominates, but they're just 2 touches away from getting burned, and that's the key. Ooh, just look at the foul. Monterrey, when they've had it, they've been able to do it, but again, they haven't been able to find the goal as clearly either.
Here's Pabon. Early ball. Guzman sharp to it. Well, as Juan mentioned at the top of the broadcast, last time that these two teams met outside of the March 9th meeting, which finished in a 1-1 draw.
Big mistake here.
It is a mistake, and it's Hurtado trying to capitalize on it. Hurtado, Pabon. Darlan Pabon, Guzman with a terrific save. And Tigres able to get rid of it, but Nahuel Guzman called into action and answers the call emphatically.
It's not just a mistake, it's the static reaction with which Tigres was able to respond to this mistake that ends up creating the opportunity. All defenders stood there while Darlan Pabon had the ball. Fortunately for them, really no one else tried to open themselves up, run to goal, or try and make an opportunity out of nothing as far as Monterrey were concerned. That's what bails Tigres out in that particular opportunity.
Eduardo Vargas in a heated conversation with John Pitti, and John Pitti doesn't want to hear any more of it. And Hurtado is being told by Pitti, use your head because you just got a yellow. You'll see your second if I see anything like that again.
Right there again, fairly called.
Ball's already gone.
But on Tigres' side, this match is starting to ripen up a little bit more and find a place in the world, or find a place on this pitch, I should say, for André Gignac, because now you start to see Edu Vargas losing his head a little bit, losing his focus at times, getting too involved with more yammering and trying to talk a bit more than to focus on his actual game. So do not be surprised if André Gignac comes through offside.
Pabon, good ball forward. Onside, here's Sanchez, it's off the post!
I want to see that again. I thought Nico Sanchez was offside.
It was an intriguing ball from Pabon nonetheless. And Sanchez might have curtailed his run. That's a late challenge. It's coming courtesy of Ener Valencia on Celso Ortiz, who's taken a number of knocks in the opening 39 minutes. But our first true chance of the game and our first Woodwork sighting.
He's on. Yeah, just on.
He's just on.
Right there, but then again, that shows you how quick we've been talking about how Tigres has been the team that dominates, but they're just 2 touches away from getting burned, and that's the key. Ooh, just look at the foul.
I also just want to point something out, that was your center back who receives that ball like that, sets up the shot, and cracks the post.
Again, you see the numbers, how things end up being developed. Guido Pizarro sends a ball into space, and there's 6 defenders. I see, look at Nico Sanchez shot right there. Didn't have enough curve on that.
Is it going to stay in play for Monterrey? Yes, it will. Good hustle from Miguel Layun. And a corner kick coming up for Rayados.
Maybe not.
No? Come on.
You know, actually,
come on.
Layun was asking, he was complaining. He's like, no, come on, it's got to be more than that. I think he was asking for a handball. That's what happened there.
That's not a corner.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I'm hanging it up. I'm done.
We just turn off the lights and go home. Yeah, no, totally. But when you see a player complaining, you're like, what?
Here's Pabon. Another good delivery. And Sanchez! Monterrey strike first! And it's Nico Sanchez, the ever-dangerous center back. 1-0 to Monterrey right before halftime.
I would say that the stadium is silent, but there's one little sector that's making noise that is absolutely deafening. As Monterrey, well-deserved, they've been the team that has gone after it. They've been the more ambitious side. Diego Alonso right here. Let's see what Nico's right there. Great job by Sanchez. It wasn't see, ladies and gentlemen, that play right there is not about going forward. It's about being able to get off your mark. Nico Sanchez, seeing that the defender's more defending with his arms than with his eyes and with his body, is able to just shift over to the left. 1-0 for Rayados.
Nicolas Sanchez, the 33-year-old from Buenos Aires, Argentina, his third season with Monterrey, his third goal of the tournament. He's 14th across all competitions for Rayados. Again, that is your center back, ladies and gentlemen. And don't forget, he was the hero, almost turned villain against Alianza as Enter Valencia almost was able to get that one off, including the deflection. Barovero, a good kick save, and now a corner kick coming up for Tigres, and that goal from Sanchez, a bit of a wake-up call. And we do need to remind you that away goals are null and void in this final. It's the aggregate is the aggregate is the aggregate. Carioca now. Not a bad ball in, one by Vargas, but it's just over the bar.
You see right there, as that was what Barovero was asking for, saying, what about the foul there on Stefan Medina? Again, as we talked about at the beginning, that was going to be one of the encounters, one of the matchups that was going to be focused on the most. We'll see what this second half has in store. Is sometimes the best thing for a team that's losing is to get a goal conceded. Kind of a wake-up call, as you mentioned, Tyler. So we'll see how that ends up playing out for the rest of this match.
Well, it always seemed like Monterrey were going to get the first one. They've been by and far the better team. Tigres has had more of the ball, but it sort of seems like the game plan from Diego Alonso says, you guys can have it, we'll hit you on the counter with our four and see if you guys can defend.
They've had all sorts of trouble. 1 minute of stoppage time added by Giampiti.
And it is just 60 seconds added on here in the first half.
But overall, and we've talked about it quite a bit throughout this match. Of course, Tigres had their moments, but they weren't able really to capitalize. We didn't see any really true shots on goal when Tigres were in their best form in this first half. But Monterrey, they don't need much. They don't need many chances, and they don't need much possession to really hurt you. If not, just ask Sporting Kansas City.
Oh. Too soon?
About too soon, but
not soon enough.
I thought it was never enough as the first half comes to an end.
So Nicolas Sanchez, just a few minutes before halftime, strikes first in this Clásico Regio Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League final, leg number 1. A wildly frustrating first half for Tigres. Monterrey have executed their game plan almost to a T. Juan Arango, your thoughts?
Again, Monterrey's been the better side. Monterrey's had more ambition. Monterrey's gone into the opposite team's own park and being able to establish themselves, wanting some revenge from that Liga MX final that they lost in their backyard, want to give their eternal rivals the same remedy.
Again, away goals do not count for more in this final, so it is 1-0 on the aggregate flat to Monterrey, thanks to Nicolas Sanchez header off the Darlin Pabon corner in the 43rd minute. We've reached halftime here at Estadio Universitario. We're going to step aside when we come back. Highlights and stats from the first half, and of course the conclusion of this first leg. Halftime here at Estadio Universitario, and that is what is on the line between these two sides that are separated by just about 25 minutes, of course without traffic, as Tigres and Monterrey, the long-awaited Clásico Regio final in the 2019 Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League, as John Pitti, our head referee, got things underway. And Juan, from the get-go, it was physical, it was awkward, and it was anything but pretty in the first 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, not something that you would be looking at as far as a Picasso painting is concerned. Still some of even the ugliest dog in the world has somebody that thinks it's cute, especially if you start finding ways to goal. If you're Monterrey, they did find ways to goal. Maybe not the most precise, but they were getting much closer than Tigres were.
And the game plan from Diego Alonso was just, listen, we'll let you have possession. We're going to make it really difficult for you to play down the middle of the field because that's where Tigres' strength lies. Finding Guido Pizarro, Quiñones, Eduardo Vargas coming back. And Nahuel Guzman's made a couple of good saves while Monterrey has just basically said, we're going to counter. We're going to see if your 4 can defend our 4, and we'll go from there.
And so far, they've been very assertive in that assumption. They've been able to come through with one of the more dangerous opportunities there, and Valencia hitting it off his shoulder. But as you mentioned, the matchup between the attackers and the Tigres defenders have gone the way of the men in blue and white. That's been the case so far. Tigres did have a moment where they started to turn the tide a little bit, but not enough because Monterrey would find the spaces to really counterattack and kept them honest.
A wildly physical first half. There were 3 yellow cards issued. Hugo Ayala and Nicolas Sanchez were given yellow cards more or less before the 20-minute mark. Nahuel Guzman with by far the best save of the game there. Nicolas Sanchez gets a great opportunity here. We thought he was off. Replay showed he was on. However, he cracks the post. But Nicolas Sanchez would have the last laugh, at least in the first half. And as you can see, Monterrey, whenever they came down this right flank, they were just wildly dangerous.
Just the matchup was not favoring them at all. Francisco Mesa had no way of stopping Dorlan Pavon, and that really created a cavalcade of opportunities that ended up in that.
And it culminated with this 43rd minute. Darlan Pavon sends it in. Nicolas Sanchez, and Juan, as you said it, the defender wasn't really always that close to him, and he just sort of drifted backwards and was able to find it. Meanwhile, about 20 seconds after the goal, it was a wake-up call for Tigres, and I think we're going to see a rejuvenated Tigres side in the second half.
That's very important. You see right there, the matchup that we've been talking about. Stefan Medina and Ener Valencia, the Colombian and the Ecuadorian going at it. It's been pretty much a telltale sign of possible things.
And that's going to do it for the highlights from the first half. Again, Nicolas Sanchez, 43rd minute. And right now it is the only thing separating these 2 sides between a few miles in the city of Monterrey. And as you can see, almost 60% percentage for Tigres. I mean, it just is one of those things where Monterrey is happy to let them have the ball.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be the case to see if they're able to capitalize in the second half of any additional mistakes that Tigres may have.
Second half coming your way soon. Don't go anywhere. Set for the second half here at Estadio Universitario. It appears that John Pitti is set to go. Nicolas Sanchez with the game and ties only goal so far, coming in the 43rd minute right before halftime off a Darlan Pavon corner. Monterrey have been the better team, created more chances. Nicolas Sanchez has also struck the post. Nahuel Guzman was forced to make a save as well. And we're officially underway in the second half. Second leg will be next week at Estadio BBVA Bancomer, the home of Monterrey. And to settle this once and for all, again, Monterrey trying to exact revenge against the Tigres side that beat them in their house 2-1 in the second leg. I was back about 18 months ago in the Apertura final. The build-up from Tigres. Salcedo. Luis Quiñones, not a bad ball in. Vargas was trying to turn. Here's Carioca. And it's straight into the hands of Barovero. If that's anywhere else, it's probably finding the back of the net.
Again, great build-up there by Tigres. Being able to find through it. Fortunately, Carioca being able to hit it the way he did, gets right under Dorlan Pavon. But the key, getting Guido Pizarro involved, getting Salcedo involved down that right-hand side, the key to success for Tigres in the early stages.
Well, I'm going to take it a step back and even simplify it. that was the quickest we've seen them move the ball. Forget where it is and the movement or whatever it might be, but just flat out,
the quickness.
That was the fastest we've seen them move the ball. One touch, two touch, out, going the other way.
Totally, and trying to find the open man, simplifying things as much as possible. That's very true. That also is something that we haven't seen today.
Which again is very unlike Tuca Ferretti's side. They usually love to play and interconnect with one another, but Monterrey, credit to them, have totally thrown Tigres off of their game tonight. And a lot of that's been due to the physicality. And if this does turn into a street fight, if the street fight continues, then I think that bodes well for Monterrey.
Or if the street fight turns into a game.
That remains to be seen.
That's Diego Alonso. You're saying, now. He wants to keep that intensity up. We talked about during the press conference how intense his team needed to be defensively in order to neutralize this Tigres side.
Especially with all the pressure that they're coming with. If there's one or two lines that are broken, the whole thing falls apart. So it requires an intense amount of discipline as Valencia is ambitious from distance, and we'll chalk it up to that. And there you have it.
That's where it's going to happen. It's either Edu Vargas or Ener Valencia.
That man is officially taken off his cape, his coat, whatever you want to call it. And it looks like he's going to get his first minutes of the 2019 Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League in the first leg of the final.
Batman coming on. Who do you take off, Robin or Black Panther?
You come up with those yourself?
Oh, no, they're there. I mean, I don't need to reinvent. Someone that's going to have to reinvent is going to be yellow card coming out. Is it Nico Sanchez? If that's it, let's see who that is. Yellow card that was issued.
It was Quiñones who went down. Believe it's Medina. Excuse me, that's Celso Ortiz.
Yeah. So third yellow card of the match for Rayados, fourth overall. Big opportunity coming up for Tigres. Let's see if the substitution's made now, although.
And it looks like it's Aquino who's coming off.
So coming on is going to be Jürgen Damm.
Double switch. Jürgen Damm, who's seen limited action in this tournament as well, but is by far one of the more dangerous players on this Tigres roster, and one of the fastest, probably in all of CONCACAF. He's going to come on, and Edu Vargas comes off, and on comes Andre Pierre Gignac for the first time in the 2019 edition of Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League.
Now he's telling Quiñones where to go. Go wide. To widen things up a little bit more. Now this is going to be very interesting how this chess match begins to evolve now.
And just the switch itself has injected a bit more life into Estadio Universitario, as if it needed any more.
Talk about what these changes can signify.
It's Valencia, the save from Barovero. Jürgen Damm tried to whip it back across, and a corner kick coming up for Tigres.
Good heads-up play there. Barovero didn't want any complications. Now, at times throughout his career, his hands have been questioned. Seemed a little bit simpler, but he was unable to corral it. Now a counterattack coming up here for Rayados.
And look at Pabon, who was just trying to run onto it and beat Damm on the outside.
So it will be very interesting to look at the insertion. I didn't think Jürgen Damm would be the first or second option, might have been the third. But as far as Tigres is concerned, it'll be looking for Jürgen Damm to really create some pace down the wing, send some crosses. Now that's going to be the big question mark as far as his accuracy is concerned. Really open things up. Quiñones also getting associated with him down the right-hand side especially. And also trying to find that one target, Andre Pierre Gignac.
Gignac with 20 goals and 3 assists in Liga MX thus far. Had 26 goals last year.
4 behind Tomas Boy for the all-time leading goal scorer in Tigres history. Of course, Tomas Boy, currently the coach at Chivas, just took over for José Saturnino Cardoso.
Quiñones trying to get to the byline, but that runs out of play.
So that's another option as well. You do see Quiñones play out on the left, Jürgen Damm playing over on the right, opening the defense up a little bit more, which has been a problem for Tigres. Now it'll be interesting to see where Ener Valencia ends up coming out in this equation. But Gignac will definitely be up top as the first number 9. Valencia most likely will be the second forward, dropping back a little bit more and running onto the defense.
Good ball in, Hurtado will be able to get there. Hurtado, and it's a massive collision between Salcedo, Guzman, and Funes Mori. Meanwhile, Tigres go quickly on the other end. Into space for Valencia. This one's starting to open up a bit. Pizarro. Now it's Dueñas. Quiñones back for Dueñas. Dangerous here. The save from Barovero, the follow from Damm. Not quite good enough, but Barovero has been much busier in the past 10 minutes than he was the entire first half.
Good opportunity, good development here by Tigres. Just slapping that ball away, Barovero, creating all types of complications. And again, speaking of complications, Monterrey starting to feel it a little bit more.
Into space for Pizarro, good touch out wide. A little more than 20 minutes remaining in this first leg. It's Nico Sanchez's goal in the 43rd minute, that's the difference maker. Dueñas, Pizarro, room to deliver. Tried to cut it back, shouts for a handball, didn't look like it was close. And good defending from Quiñones, and he'll stay with Tigres.
Have to be some very long arms to be able to call that a handball.
Quiñones on the first time, Pizarro trying to bring it down, it skirts underneath his foot, and now here's Valencia. Pizarro will take it, and that is mightily scuffed.
Not just once, but twice there by Guido Pizarro. And Angel Saldívar, who would be another option outside of Maxi Mesa, the Argentine international. Mesa still the jury out on him. Very ballyhooed arrival here with Monterrey, who hasn't been able to fulfill expectations after coming from Independiente in Argentina.
For the small fee of $13.2 million.
Makes Miguel Layún just seem so cheap at 3 million euros,
exactly,
right?
Peanuts.
Yeah.
Layún, not a bad ball in. Hurtado straight into the hands of Guzman. The flag stayed down, and Hurtado knows.
But it's amazing to see Monterrey being able to create such opportunities off set pieces against a Tigres side that has been known as a very strong defensive team and a very well-disciplined defensive team.
And that wasn't even close.
No.
I mean, that was just a total miscommunication along the back line.
Substitution.
And now we are going to see Maxi Mesa, the 26-year-old from Argentina, in his first season with Monterrey.
Aviles Hurtado comes off. That was probably the first option.
And Hurtado, especially sitting on a yellow card, is the best option to bring off. And as we mentioned before, $13.2 million from Independiente. And he got flipped for
right
about
there.
$2.7 million.
And as he salutes the Tigres faithful. Now it'll be interesting to see Maxi Mesa. Will he play out wide, or will he play more towards the middle, allow Rodolfo Pizarro to play out wide a little bit more? And it looks like it's going to be the former, not the latter. Ayala, a player that has had his share of troubles with Funes Mori tonight.
Quinones trying to turn Layun. Difficult task, but he's able to do so. Dueñas back for Quinones, but he's offside. Anytime a Tigres player receives the ball with his back to goal, there is no room to play. Zero.
And no room, actually not just no room, just no one to play with. So give a lot of credit to Monterrey to be able to neutralize those two aspects of play, which, and it was interesting, you mentioned that, what was it? I think it was maybe 10 or so minutes ago when Tigres were knocking the ball around the middle of the pitch. That was one of the only times they've done it. That's, again, one of the keys that Monterrey's been able to really neutralize as far as Tigres' attack is concerned.
Jürgen Damm, a swing and a miss. Here's a lofted attempt, and it's an ambitious one at that.
Give him an A for effort on that one, at least. And that would have gone in. That might as well start turning the lights out.
When those go in, you don't have a chance if you're on the receiving end of it.
You would have no reason to blame Paton Guzman on that one, as he just came out to play the ball. His teammate just ends up being on the side of error.
And it was Jürgen Damm who's not looked sharp since coming on.
And that's been one of the question marks throughout his career. He can be extremely brilliant. Of course, that's one of the reasons why when he was national team coach, Juan Carlos Osorio was so high on him. But then it was also one of the reasons why he ended up being so disappointed in him towards the end of his tenure.
Valencia, great little nutmeg. Layun trying to recover. Quinones now battling with Medina. Two Colombians going at it. Quinones still with it. And Barovero cleans up the entire mess. And Quinones is asking for a bit more from the crowd here at Estadio Universitario.
Tigres right now attacking with more skill than will.
Somehow falls for Gignac. And plays Jürgen Damm into space, who's floated over to the left-hand side. Damm. Good ball. Here's Gignac on the first time. They want a handball. John Pitti wants none of it. And a foul coming out the other way. And now the referee has become public enemy number one in Monterrey.
Bring it down a notch, son. As the 40-year-old referee saying, calm things down. Remember, no VAR here. So, no. Grazes off the back of his jersey.
But as you said,
no
VAR.
VAR.
Always got to make the claim.
Yeah.
Always got to make it.
Sometimes it'll go. Sometimes it will. They have to do it collectively in order to make it happen tonight.
Gignac trying to turn. He's going to let one fly, and Barovero can hold on to it safely. Andre Pierre Gignac starting to find small, acute little windows. That's the last thing that Monterrey want. Here's another look at that handball shout. Nothing in it.
Goes off his back, so Quinones is getting more involved as minutes pass by.
Valencia cushions it down. Gignac. Smart play. Quinones now goes for the curler. Blocked by Gallardo. Knotted back down. Ortiz will clear it. Monterrey starting to press a bit. Now it's Jürgen Damm. Damm towards the outside. That should be a corner.
Should have been a corner.
Goal
it's
kick.
Not. It's going to be a goal kick.
It's difficult to do. It's great when it happens, when you find somebody like Andre Pierre Gignac who embraces the city, embraces the fans, the club. And it shows on the field as well. It translates onto the field as Quinones bends one in. Gignac was there, but a great header from Medina as he beats the Frenchman to it. Now it's Damm again, trying to get it on his right foot this time. Not a bad delivery. Here's Pizarro. And it just glances wide. That was a real opportunity to level us at one.
Probably one of, if not the best opportunity for Tigres in this second half. Just missing it wide. Again, another great chance. Diego Alonso.
Of course, that rotation so important especially when you get into the latter rounds of an International Cup. Back post, and that's great communication for Monterrey. They see it out of play, and Rayados are mighty close to escaping Estadio Universitario with a 1-goal lead. Still a little bit of time left, but this is revenge. If you're Diego Alonso and this Monterrey side, given what happened in that final a couple of years ago in the Apertura, where Tigres won 3-2 in the Clásico Regio, and they won the second leg in Monterrey 2-1. And now here's Funes Mori, but he's offside, and that led to the song being chanted, and this is the English translation. You can help me out with the Spanish one. Champions in your house.
That was one of the hashtags that they had been using throughout this entire preview or leading up to this entire tie.
A couple of bodies hitting the deck, including Quiñones, and it looks like a yellow card is going to be issued to Jesus Gallardo. Well, the hashtag can't necessarily be returned by Monterrey after one leg, but they're about halfway there. Four minutes of stoppage time.
4 minutes away from winning for the first time in 3 years here at Estadio Universitario. Last time Rayados were able to win was back in May 11th of 2016, a 3-1 victory. It was by Carlos Sanchez, Dorlan Pavon, and Funes Mori. The lone goal for Tigres was courtesy of offside.
Gignac! Barovero punches it aside. Still alive for the home side. Quiñones towards the byline. Good ball across. And Monterrey deal with it appropriately, but they concede a corner in the process.
Barovero was calling the offside, but the referee decides to play on. Great play there by Barovero to react. And again, the lack of continuity from Tigres. In that 3-1 match, the lone goal by Tigres was Rafael Sobis.
It is impressive, though. I mean, Andre Pierre-Gignac is just a terrific footballer, but it doesn't matter the angle, whether he's off balance. He always finds a way to square his hips to the goal, get his foot around the ball. I mean, it's really
always on target for
always
some.
On target.
Yeah. Or very, very close, but still, I mean, it's rare that you see that ball getting skied into the stands. Tigres have been the more offensive team throughout this second half. Monterrey have kind of hunkered down a little bit more. But still, that hasn't translated into much as far as Tigres being threatening in the grand scheme of things.
Got a one by Salcedo, about halfway through the stoppage time allotted. It's a minimum of 4 minutes from John Pitti. From Carioca. One by Medina, who was all the way up from the center back position, and that's what we've seen a lot from Diego Alonso's bunch tonight. Is one of the two center backs stepping all the way up and making life that much more difficult for Tigres.
Tyler, you could actually make a case for either one of the two central back defenders for Rayados to be man of the match.
It's got to be Sanchez.
Sanchez, yeah, definitely Sanchez. But if also you wanted to, you could also state a case for Stefan Medina and the assignments that he's had to deal with and had to incur throughout.
Here's Gignac, he got a touch to it, but it's just wide. He is an absolute poacher.
Quiñones, who got a little bit more involved coming in, Hugo Ayala, and you start to see the desperation set in as far as Tigres are concerned. But still, your point to what you made before, the most offensive player in the past 20 minutes on the pitch has been Andre Pierre-Gignac. So you really start to look at the return leg and how involved is he going to be? Do you play him from the onset? Do you play him from the beginning? I would say yes, the gravity of the situation. What adjustments do I make? Do I have to be more offensive? Absolutely. This does help Monterrey as we get into the final 30 seconds. But they can drop back a little bit more. They can be a little bit more wary as far as the result is concerned and wait on the attack. And wait for Monterrey and force them to go on the attack a bit more because they have to win at all costs in order to advance. In order to win, I should say, the title.
Valencia in for Pizarro. Again, good play from Medina. He's been terrific tonight. As Juan mentioned, both center backs for Monterrey have done it. And Monterrey does the job at Estadio Universitario. It's an excellent result for Diego Alonso's side. Nicolas Sanchez with the game winner in the 43rd. The job is not done, and that's exactly what Nahuel Guzman is trying to relay to the crowd. There's still 90 minutes to play, 25 minutes down the road next week. If the second leg is anything like the first, you're in for a treat and then some. Full time in the first leg, Monterrey 1, Tigres 0. Juan Arango, what do we make of it all?
Masterclass defensively for Monterrey. Ironic to say that with one of the most offensive teams in Mexican football, outmastering the master of defense in Tuca Ferretti. But as you said, Tyler, it's going to be a tremendous classic of a match just about 13 kilometers away. That's going to be very key as far as Monterrey's pretensions. And not only that, 4th time in 4 finals at the CONCACAF level that they've been able to come away successful.
Well, if it were allowed and if it were feasible, I think that the crowd would want the second leg to happen in about 20 minutes. But such is life sometimes. We got to wait a week for second leg between these two sides. We're going to step aside. Thanks for joining us, folks. 1-0 is the final score.